Terrorism. Theirs and ours. What is terrorism? Why do people resort to terrorism? In a constantly changing world of images, we have to keep our heads straight to know what terrorism is and what it is not. Even more importantly, we need to know what causes terrorism and how to stop it. Officials don't define terrorism because definitions involve a commitment to analysis, comprehension, and adherence to some norm of consistency. There is the need for the moral revulsion we feel against terror to be selective. We are to denounce the terror of those groups which are officially disapproved, but we are to applaud the terror of those groups of whom officials do approve. The dominant approach also excludes from consideration the terrorism of friendly governments. All kinds of tyrants have been America's friends. History unfortunately recognizes and accords visibility to power, not to weakness. And visibility has been accorded historically to dominant groups.
My father would get really mad. You wouldn't know if you were going to say something wrong to set him off. I remember one night he was mad because the answering machine which he had in his garage went off and people hung up on it. And he accused my friends of calling on his answering machine and hanging up. And I remember looking at him and saying, "How do you know they're my friends calling?" And he just knew. They were just my friends, and that was the end of the argument. And I got up, and the next thing I knew, he had grabbed me, thrown me across the room, and was in my face, choking me. I don't even remember what he said. I just remembered my necklace was in his hand, and I just walked away like nothing happened. How do we look at that in terms of America? We can't walk away like nothing happened. The world's different. People want what we have, or they want to take it over. If we give them even a little bit of sense that we don't care, that they can come in and do what we want, and we're not going to try to protect ourselves, then they will just take over like my father did.
For people who are, avowedly want to kill us, you kill them before they get the chance. And for the people who suffer under people like that, you try to raise their standard of living and raise their level of understanding about political freedom, religious tolerance, the rule of law, institutions of justice, things in which, the societies that spawn people who think like this are sorely lacking.
Their value system is completely diametrically opposed to ours, and they very, very much think that a Western way of living is wrong, and that the way that Westerners choose to live will lead to the end of civilization. So in their own way, they're trying to preserve what they feel is correct civilization. We just feel 100% in opposition to what they believe. To save democracy is the way to go.
Now, what about the other side?
In today's era, the iconic terror attack is the attack on the World Trade Center, in which about 3,000 people were killed. That is our iconic modern take on what terrorism is. But if I think about that attack and the numbers of people involved, of course it was horrible, and it was indeed terrible, an act of terror. But there are many other acts of terror that are also horrible that we don't think of as terrorism, and perhaps we should. I mean, that number 3,000, for example, it's the same number of children and pregnant women who die every day of malaria in Africa, a disease that's totally preventable and treatable. And we could prevent and treat it if we spent more international aid. It's an act of terror that we're not doing anything about that. It would take around $1 billion to save these extremely poor people's lives. That's a day of spending on military and defense in peacetime.
I was driving to work this morning, and I'm fighting with my husband right now. I was getting really upset about it, and I was thinking what a luxury I have, that the fact that my husband hasn't called me in a couple days from Morocco is the thing that's upsetting me. What a luxury that is, when there are just so many millions of people that can't be bothered with something like that because they have to go out and rummage through garbage to feed their kids.
They can do that to them, they can do that to me, they can do that to my neighbors. It's a police state. That's far from freedom. That's far from a comfortable state of living. It's far from a peaceful, free country.
Terror is an intense, overpowering fear. Terrorism is the use of terrorizing methods of governing or resisting a government. There have been identified 5 forms of terrorism: state terrorism, religious, criminal, political, and oppositional terrorism. Sometimes these 5 can converge and overlap. Of the 5 types of terror, the official approach is to focus on only one form: political terrorism, which causes the least in terms of loss of human lives and property. The form that exacts the highest loss is state terrorism. The second highest loss is created by religious terrorism. The next highest loss is caused by criminal terrorism. No politics, simply crime and pathology.
I was walking back to my friend's house after getting a bite to eat, and just out of nowhere, I felt some stinging by my eye and turned my head and got whacked on my face, and there's nothing I could do about it. I hit the ground, and about 6 guys just were beating on me, trying to get my valuables.
I was driving in my car. I was by myself one Friday evening, and all of a sudden somebody came up to my window and just started smashing in my window and then just took off. And I got a description of him, and I called the police, and we finally found out where this guy works. They wrote up a report on him, and I've now been able to press charges, but the guy's now been harassing me. And I don't know why this is going on. I don't know why he's doing this, and I don't know why he targeted me.
I was kidnapped for ransom. I came to a stop sign and was pulled out of my car by gunpoint by 3 individuals. I was immediately duct taped and thrown to the trunk of a car. About an hour and a half later, we came to what seemed to be a boiler room, and 7 hours after that, I spoke to my parents for the first time, where I was starting to get beaten so that my parents could hear at the other end of the speaker.
Why do they do it? What makes the terrorists tick?
the one that has experienced violence at other people's hands. I'm the victim here. I am a victim of violence and of abuse, and that's why I become violent. I'm violent. It's the experience of victimhood that has produced a violent reaction in me. I am not who I've become. I don't know how much clearer I can make that to you. It is not my problem. You got it?
In modern times, with modern technology and means of communications, the targets have been globalized. Therefore, globalization of violence is an aspect of what we call globalization of economy and culture in the world as a whole. We can't expect everything else to be globalized and violence not to be. We do have visible targets. Airplane hijacking is something new because international travel is relatively new too. Everybody now is in your gun sight. Therefore, the globe is within the gun sight. That has globalized terror.
The absence of revolutionary ideology has been central to the spread of terror in our time. You do not solve social problems by individual acts of violence. Social problems require social and political mobilization, and thus wars of liberation are to be distinguished from terrorist organizations. The revolutionaries didn't reject violence, but they rejected terror as a viable tactic of revolution. That revolutionary ideology has gone out at the moment. In the 1980s and 1990s, revolutionary ideology receded, giving into the globalized individual.
How do we respond to this challenge? Rulers from one country after another have been responding with traditional methods. The traditional method of shooting it out, whether it's with missiles or some other means. Frankly, it won't work. The central problem of our time. Political minds rooted in the past, at odds with modern times, producing new realities.